Ho, 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 and Merry Ruthless, everybody. We're here with a discussion from a forum poster named Luca Skodlos. My apologies, Luca, if I am butchering your name. Today's discussion revolves around the post's title, which says, I feel Ruthless is better for new players than the regular game, and here is why. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this to you all as a community to discuss is because what Luca has done here is he has put a lot of the things that we've been chatting about since League launch for Forbidden Sanctum, as we've been playing together and as I've been over streaming, playing hardcore solo self-found Ruthless and having simply a blast. Frankly, like more fun playing Path of Exile than I've had for several leagues, if not for several years. And that includes even the year that I took off of playing PoE. Anyway, I wanted to share this with you, not because this is my own perspective on Ruthless. Several things that Luca puts forward, I personally am going to disagree with. I think there's more nuance to be had here, but I think Luca asks a very good question, and he makes some reasoned arguments for his personal thesis that Ruthless might actually be better for newer players than the base regular game. So that's my disclaimer today. I don't want to see or read any comments of folks saying, well, Iron, how dare you make this kind of thesis, blah, 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 blah. Today, we are hosting a discussion featuring essentially another topic that someone has posted on the forums, and I'm going to agree with some of the things he said. I'm going to disagree with some of them. And of course, in the future, we're going to make more videos discussing Ruthless and its benefits and the fun aspects of it and its drawbacks. But for today, we're just going to deal with this question, and hopefully wherever you are in the world, you are having a wonderful, merry Ruthless weekend. The post reads like so. I've been playing Ruthless since the start of the league, constantly 1 to 2 hours per day, and here's what I've learned. Ruthless is harder, but also way slower, so you will learn the monster and boss mechanics better. I've encountered bosses in regular play that I would kill in a few seconds, never letting them use any skills. Secondly, there is a lot of content missing. Crafting, Pantheon, some orbs, etc. Yes, for regular players, it can be painful not to be able to craft. Getting some attributes is hard, but I feel that new players don't care about crafting at all, and it's hard to learn, especially harvest and crafting post-campaign. Thirdly, drop-only support gems and very limited active gem selling by NPCs. I actually love this, because you are not overwhelmed by must-have support gems from vendors the moment you turn level 8, 16, etc. And it really helps with thinking about your build, because you didn't have to think about much when you have 100% more damage combined from support gems, as it became mandatory in regular play. Fourthly, very slow progression and farming in low levels. Yes, this is optional and many players don't do this, since the more levels you are, the better items and more powerful gems you can get. But when you are starting as a new player around level 20 and have that 4-level chest with 30 armor and you want 200 armor on a new chest, you just slow down and farm for a bit because transmutations are rare in the low levels, and it really helps understanding the mechanic and defensive systems of PoE. Fifthly, you learn to dodge. Learn to have a good placement and think about the monsters you are facing, which, in my opinion, is better than relying on movement skills in regular play. Yes, movement skills are better, but sometimes you run to a pack of monsters and you get slowed, cursed, whatever still makes the movement skill slow, out of charges, or on cooldown, and you can still end up dead if you rely on it. Sixthly, he says, the last but not least thing is I love coming back, actually, because every hour of gaming brings something new and something to play for. And I feel this will last until the end of the league for me, not mentioning that Sanctum League isn't the best. Overall, I think Ruthless is better for new players, even though there are minimum items and rarity drops. But as a newcomer, you still don't use trade, and the item drops when you farm for a bit is quite okay in Ruthless. I play hardcore solo self-found Ruthless, and I can't imagine switching to regular play because the progress is much more fun with more entertaining gameplay. What do you guys think? Would you recommend Ruthless to a new player because of its slowness, or would you throw a new player into the regular game with dozens and dozens of overwhelming things that are just too much to understand as well? That's the end of Luca's post, and I think it's beautifully worded and well put together. Now, that being said, I've got some things to poke at and some feedback here to answer some of Luca's questions. His first point, he says that the game is harder, but it's way slower, and you're going to learn monster mechanics. I can absolutely affirm that. There are monster mechanics on trash mobs, on rare mobs, on boss mobs that I have never, ever seen before, that I've genuinely never known existed, okay? So that's something where I've learned something about the game from playing in Hardcore Soul Self-Found Ruthless mode, and I never would have experienced those mechanics. And again, maybe for many players, there's no desire to experience those mechanics or learn that aspects of the game. So, from here on out, where I'm giving my opinion, don't hear anything I'm saying as, hey, you're not playing Ruthless and therefore you're playing Path of Exile wrong. Hear, hey, there's another way to play Path of Exile, and here's some of what's fun about it. So I can affirm that one of the fun things is learning that there's different boss mechanics, different monster mechanics than what I was otherwise aware of just playing the base regular versions of Path of Exile for the last umpteenth years. His second point, where he discussed a lot of the missing content, I think this is a big part of the argument where I could be potentially persuaded to agree that Ruthless might be something where new players actually learn the game and take on the core principles, the core game mechanics of Path of Exile in a more learner-friendly environment. Imagine for a moment starting out Path of Exile for the first time, and it's really tough to do for a lot of us to be able to, mentally transport ourselves in our time machines to go back to first playing Path of Exile. But just for a moment, imagine you're coming into Path of Exile for the first time ever. You're on the beach, you're killing a zombie. Eventually you're going to go kill Hillock. Eventually you're going to go into Lion Eye's Watch. And your buddies who are on voice comms, or your friends who are on voice comms, or the streamers that you're watching, or the video build guide that you're watching to help you get acclimated to the game are talking about maps and endgame farming and how you need to have 6 links and all these other things. And you just want to know, where do you click to go next? Do you need to talk to Bestel, to Nessa? Do you need to go talk to the other guy, Tarkley? What do you need to click on in order to progress? That's the sort of mental state that we kind of got to put ourselves back into when we're coming into a new player frame of reference and a new player frame of mind. And in that regard, I think toning down the amount of layers of information and the layers of new learning mechanics that a player needs to adopt and bring into and assimilate into their own gameplay, lowering the number of things that a new player needs to take on is actually good at a certain point. There is a threshold to that. Players want challenge. Players want something to aspire to. Players want to be learning new things all the time, especially in a game like Path of Exile that attracts players who always want to be learning some new technique, some new build, some new approach to the game. So don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying just dumb down Path of Exile and that'll make it more welcoming to more players. But what I am saying is that a removal of a lot of the systems that we as veteran players have grown to appreciate over the years is something that might be an added attractive piece to Ruthless. Removing things that for veterans we're going, okay, how do I get to this? How do I get to that? How do I get to my harvest crafts? How do I set up my atlas? Which of the umpteenth number of endgame bosses am I going to farm? Removing those things and saying, all right, how do I get a 2-link? What can I possibly do on a 2-link? Right? Oh, I had a transmute drop. What can I use that for? Is that something that I should use? In regular Path of Exile, no new player is going to hear that from a veteran player. Yeah, pick up a transmute and definitely use that. No, you're going to filter that out on your item filter. Why aren't you using an item filter that's filtering out transmutes? All right, maybe that's a bad example, but you see the point, I hope. The point is that for new players coming in, there is a certain level of challenge and a certain level of acclimation that players already need to have with the base game of Path of Exile, and that is already a healthy chunk of game mechanics for a new player to be exposed to at their time of entry into the game. And so removing a whole bunch of the extra aspects of the game can be something that can help hook a player to grow in and desire more out of Path of Exile. And so I could see that as being a solid argument to say start off with Ruthless, and then maybe if you want there to be more, then go play the regular base game of Path of Exile. His third point about the drop-only support gems, I could make an argument either way for this. I think the gem system in and of itself in Path of Exile is something to learn, piggybacking off of point 2. And so sometimes that can be overwhelming. Sometimes it can be something that new players just intuitively get into as they follow and progress through the game. So I think there's an argument to be made here on both sides. And namely, one of the arguments to be made for there to be multiple gem choices available, not just support gems, but also active gems available, like in the regular base game of Path of Exile, is that if you're a new player and you make a mistake, if you select a skill you don't want to use, you're really stuck in Ruthless. Like, you are praying for another active support gem to drop, or if you're unfamiliar with the story campaign, you're just hoping that whatever quest you're doing is going to provide you with an opportunity to go back and rectify the choice of whatever it was that you made that you found out you're using a skill you don't like. So when we're talking about things from a new player perspective, many of us, Luca and myself included, we're coming from a veterans player's perspective. When we scroll over Heavy Strike and Molten Strike and Magma Orb and Blight and Raise Zombie, we have some sense of what those skills are and what they do. A new player, apart from reading the text on the skill, has no idea how that skill is going to tangibly feel at their fingertips as they are commanding their character. And so that can be pretty punishing. That could be an argument against this particular point from Luca. And so, like I said, I could see this particular point that he's put forward argued either way. I could see there being an argument for both sides of this. Because I think as a new player, if you make a choice in a video game that leaves you locked in, I'm just thinking of my own experiences of plenty of games that I've played with friends on Discord and in voice chat who are helping me through, okay, I made this selection, now what do I need to do? Oh, you selected choice A when you were talking to NPC Z? Oh, that's really bad. Now you're stuck with that for 20 levels. Oh, great. Now I feel bad and I feel like a moron. What should I do? Yeah, you should just go restart a new character again. That's an awful feeling for a new player to have, that they've made an irreversible, irrevocable mistake on their character, and they're not going to be able to make a serious decision that is consciously made until Ciosa in Act 3, or until whenever the next skill choice gem is going to be made available to them. Luca's next point is about the very slow progression and farming in low levels. I think this is something that is not convincing to me that this is helpful for new players. If I'm a new player and I have little to no understanding or concept grasp of item level and of zone level and of the fact that certain prefixes and suffixes can roll on certain combinations of item levels and those can only drop in certain zones, if I don't have any knowledge of that, it's going to be really tough for me to either A, be encouraged enough to run my head through a brick wall that is maybe a gear check zone or an itemization zone that's being checked on, right? If I'm not able to take down a boss or progress. For instance, I'll use this as just a simple example. Merveil. Merveil is a boss that does cold damage. Everybody on the face of the planet that's a veteran of Path of Exile knows that if you want to make Merveil a little tiny bit easier to take down, you want to make sure that you stack some cold resistance, and that makes the fight go a little bit easier from a defensive side of view. New players don't know that. New players don't know, as they're looking through itemization that's dropping in Act 1, oh, I need to keep my eyes peeled for cold resistance because Merveil's coming up and she does additional cold damage as opposed to any other elemental damage sources. New players don't know that. So new players don't know, hey, go to the ledge and farm until you get a ring to drop. Or new players don't know, hey, I need to go to this other zone and maybe hope to upgrade my chest. New players don't necessarily recognize that, oh, if I'm wearing this armor, it actually slows down my character. And that matters in Ruthless because we don't have movement skills. So player speed actually matters. Having a negative modifier to your movement speed on your character can really matter. So I think there's arguments to be probably made on both sides here, but that's where I come down on this one. The next point that he brings up is the need to learn to dodge. This is one that I absolutely agree with him on 100%. New players who are coming into Path of Exile can develop incredibly bad habits. And hi, my name's G3Iron. I've got tons of bad gaming habits. One of them is that I'm a terrible player with anything that demands micro whatsoever. You can ask any of my friends who have ever played League of Legends with me. I'm awful at micro. I am probably the world's worst player at micro on any game that requires keyboard and mouse. I'm bad, okay? There's no other way to say it. I'm really bad at it. That being said, coming into a game like the regular Path of Exile, where I can trade with all sorts of people and all sorts of good drops are dropping for me, and I can simply gear check my way past different things, that is going to be a very tempting thing for someone like me to do. And as a new player, you might develop some bad habits with that. Whereas in Ruthless, you're going to be taught very early on, especially with the mechanic, that when you die in Ruthless, if you're playing softcore, a boss that you're encountering when you have to re-enter the zone has healed up a significant percentage of their damage. So that's going to be a big, big challenge for players, and it's going to incentivize you to learn the boss's mechanics and kill it the first time without having to quote-unquote shotgun it down. So I'm with Luca on this. I think Ruthless teaches you a lot about player positioning. Again, going back to his first point, really, about boss mechanics, about monster mechanics, and about where you, as a player, in relationship to your power and your gear, need to actually be positioned in order to do the most damage and stay alive the longest. His last comment about wanting to come back and just enjoying the game, and that there's every single time that you sit down, you feel like you can progress and make some serious, significant upgrades in your play. That is, to me, that is the crowning jewel of Ruthless so far. Every time I log off from streaming and I'm done playing a character, there's a little voice inside my head that's sitting, on my shoulder saying, "Hey, Iron, you should totally come back and play some more Ruthless right now. You might get something that's rare to drop, and it might actually have a stat that you could use on one of your characters." That's a really good feeling for Path of Exile. Those of us who have loved Path of Exile for years, that's the feeling for Path of Exile. It's not just playing Path of Exile that's fun. It's the, hey, can I be theory crafting and thinking about this outside of the game? Can I be playing POB in my head or playing POB as I'm building other characters and testing other things and wanting to see, is this actually a more efficient use of 3 passive points, or is this other alternative way a better use of 3 passive points? Oh, where do I need to be spending my 1 alchemy orb that I've got? Do I need to use it on a chess piece that I've got? Or do I need to use it, and would it be wiser to use it on a jewelry piece? What's actually a better option for me that's going to work in the long term, or in the longer-ish term, in my favor? Those are all questions that Ruthless is making me ponder, even as I'm getting the sparse drops that Ruthless presents. And it has made the game very, very fun, very, very challenging, very, very enjoyable. And yes, it's slower than regular Path of Exile, but that hasn't made my enjoyment of it be any less. In fact, I think I've enjoyed it more just slowing down and observing the scenic route of the leveling 10-act story campaign of Path of Exile. And again, those of you who know me and have been around the channel for a while, you know I have been one arguing for and pleading with the community to say, let's really put our money where our mouth is and tell Grinding Gear Games that we would really like an alternative leveling experience, because a lot of people are sick of the 10-act story campaign. I'm that guy who's saying we need something other than the 10-act story campaign to level and progress characters with, and yet I'm playing Ruthless, slogging my way through the 10-act story campaign, and it is more fun right now in Ruthless than I have ever had in Path of Exile leveling up a character. All right, so I've given some of my thoughts to Luca's questions here and there. Thanks so much to Luca for posting this. This is a beautiful post. I really appreciate that he's put this together, because he's put into words a lot of different pros and cons that we've been talking about over on the stream throughout the last 2 weeks or so since we've been playing 320 Forbidden Sanctum. But I'd love to hear from down below in the comments what you think about each of these arguments. Maybe you've got other arguments, maybe you've got other opinions, maybe you think this is totally wrong and everybody should be playing regular Path of Exile and Ruthless is a complete waste of time. Whatever your opinion is, I look forward to reading them down below in the comments. And as always, Merry Ruthless, and I hope the 320 Forbidden Sanctum League is the league. A Mirror of Calandra drops for you if you're playing regular Path of Exile. And if you're playing Ruthless like me, then I just hope you get a support gem that you can actually use in your build. Thanks so much, everybody. Merry Ruthless. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.